It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here, of course, on this Monday. And thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. I do very much appreciate you being here with us here today. Hopefully you had yourself a great weekend. Some of you are probably out there moving some putting some seed in the ground. I am positive of that. I saw lots of discussion and pictures on social media across the different platforms, so that is great to see. And, of course, things aren't necessarily perfect conditions depending on where you are, but, yeah, we're off to, I guess, a decent start in different parts of the country, and some still just kind of waiting. But, hey, the calendar flips to May, and it's always interesting to see what happens when that calendar shifts to May. It's like, early, and then all of a sudden it flips to May. It's like, okay, it's like this mental reset. It just sort of changes, and we are still early, even if the calendar says April or May, and lots of time. So take your time, and of course, be safe out there for sure. If you have any, before we say feedback, we got to get to who's actually on the show today. Pete Johnson will be here. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about Grasshopper forecast for Western Canada. I've got some questions about soil microbiology in regards to this three-legged stool of abundance versus diversity of those microbes versus the functionality of the soil. We'll talk about that. Kind of chilly in different parts for sure in Western Canada and into the Northern Plains. And, Green Eye Tech is a company out of Israel that's got like a new financing round of $20 million. Of course, this is a new wave of trying to figure out how to kill weeds or take care of your weed control issues without using herbicide products. So we'll talk about that. And also, of course, the importance of calibration when it comes to your planter or your seeder. We got that and a whole lot more. So lots of stuff to talk about with Pete Johnson. We're also going to be joined today by the Director of Agronomy with Nutrien. It is Karl Wyant. He'll be here. I'm going to talk to him about sulphur. I happened to run into him last week at the Ad Farm Voice event. He was on a panel that I had hosted. And great guy, smart guy, Karl. And he's going to talk about sulphur here today for corn, beans, and canola for sure. If you're using canola, you're definitely thinking about sulphur. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you are definitely more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. It was interesting last week at that Farm Voice event that I participated in Kansas City. A lot of talk about sustainability, and it was really, really, I guess, fascinating in the sense that people think we have how should I put it? This has become much more of the consistent narrative than something that is out there that we're trying to achieve, whether that's on the farm or at the corporate level. I hosted the corporate panel, which I found interesting, in some of the influences that, like, say, Wall Street has on the sustainability priorities or KPIs that a company would have. Money talks, as the saying goes. But the farmers that were there did a very, very good job. One was a rancher, one was a farmer. Talk about just what they do on their farm and sort of telling that story. And Nick, who I mentioned last week, heavily involved no-till and cover crops. And, hey, that's sustainable too. Not necessarily this like, hey, I think what everybody's sort of figured out, to be honest with you, and we see this at some of our content, is companies that and stakeholders that lead with this leads to ROI, or here's what the ROI is, this, or decreases that upfront cost to the farmer, or, increases that back end ROI. That's how you increase the uptake or change or alter some of the practices. If the messaging consistently from government or companies is thou shalt do this, that's where the pushback happens. So that was very clear in that panel discussion last week. It was really fascinating. Okay, we're going to take a break, and enough of that. We'll park it, and we're going to get to Peter Wheat Johnson, see what he's up to, see how his weekend was, and we're going to talk about a number of agronomic issues. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
Today we're talking to Belgium's field crop product manager. It is Brad Awanku. What benefits can a grower expect when they apply manipulator PGR in their cereals?
What we see is that after application, it adjusts apical dominance. The main stem and tiller heads will be more even than without the application. This will help to increase harvest efficiency. It also, what we see is maximum yields with that due to the efficient use of nutrients. So they've done some work showing that you'll get better yields with the use of a PGR like manipulator. And of course, the other benefit is reduced lodging risk. Just with the shorter stems and stronger stems, we see plants standing better with the application of manipulator PGR. It's registered for use in all cereals. Spring wheat, of course, in durum wheat. We are registered in oats and barley. There are some restrictions with barley, especially with some of the maltsters not accepting because there are some MRLs that aren't established in certain markets around the world.
And that website is belgiumcanada.com. Let's get rolling here with Agronomic Monday on RealAg Radio. This segment's brought to you by Manipulator PGR. Want to use a PGR in your cereals, but no time for a separate pass? The growing season's pretty busy. Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. One tiller! Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging risk, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yield. Talk to your local retailer for more information and to confirm acceptable tank mixes. That's an important part of that whole equation. Well, I know a guy that loves plant growth regulators. It is Wheat Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Going awesome, thanks, Shaun. It's a little wet here in Ontario these days. We were just gearing up strong on Friday, and yeah, a lot of people got rained out. A few people in Eastern Ontario trying to finish seeding winter wheat, and I saw on Twitter that 15 acres to go and got rained out. It's just like, dang, so close, but not quite finished. Meanwhile, corn planting started, just a few acres as well here in southwestern Ontario. I think a lot of guys are ready to roll, but it had been so cold last week. There wasn't many acres got done. Now it's warm and wet, so we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, on the Western Canadian prairies too, it's we're into May this week. Okay, it still feels like we are in early March. It has been quite chilly. There is an opportunity for some precipitation and in some cases a little bit of snowfall depending on where you are. That water is going to be fairly cold coming from the sky, Pete, when you're talking about weather that is like 9 to 12 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so for the corn growers and the soybean growers, we really worry about, a cold water imbibition or chilling injury, if you will. So be careful. If the cold rain is coming, you don't want to push it with those crops. And I think as we talked last week, Shaun, man, those first few hours are incredibly impactful. Like even the first 90 minutes in terms of soybeans, they take up of the vast majority of the seed water. And so, yeah, if you see those rain clouds rolling in within about 10 hours, you just got to pull the plug and say, nope, we're going to wait till after the rain.
The high today in Winnipeg, okay? In Winnipeg. Now, not known for its like super balmy temperatures during the winter, but come on, we're in spring here, Pete. It's a high of 6 Celsius.
Yeah. And, it's still April. So So guys are okay with that, right, Shaun?
Yeah.
It's really kind of funny. The farmer mentality, and one grower said this to me that his dad always said, you know, it's always early until it's late.
Oh, what wisdom. What
I love it,
wisdom.
but it is the farmer mentality. It gets to the calendar changes from April 30th to May 1st, and pretty much across Canada, it goes from being, oh yeah, we're early, we're in good shape, to, oh my gosh, it's May, we gotta go, we gotta go.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I know one of the things I wanted to, I saw a few people talking about this on social media on the weekend. The importance, a farmer was showing for, tweeting or posting about frustration about, are there any air drills that are easy to calibrate? We don't need to get into that as much, but just it reminded me of the importance of that calibration, seeder, planter, whatever you're doing to make sure that you're doing things properly.
Yeah, 100%. And finally, the manufacturers are starting to come to the table. I know the new air drill that John Deere just released, and I'm pretty sure other companies have some level of this, if not already. But the new air drill that they just released this winter does all of those things really simply, Shaun. Up until this point, it's been a huge frustration. But and I haven't operated that new green drill, but they tell me that it calibrates itself almost, that they've really gotten it down to more of a science and quite simple to do from the cab, as opposed to, get out, turn the crank three times, or whatever. Like, it's just, even that is way easier though than a box drill. Have you ever tried to calibrate a box drill? Oh my gosh.
I remember as a kid, we had those, what were they? Those Noble drills. Like we the boxes, and the DK5s was the model. I can't remember, but yeah, we had those. Yes.
Yeah, well, box drills in general are just controlled spill devices, and they'll run faster when the box is full versus when it's empty, or vice versa sometimes. And I am adjusting all the time on my box drill, and you never know till you're done whether you were right.
I remember the back of the tandem truck. You had the spout, right, and then you had to like line it up with the box, and like think about that loading versus some of the centralized loading systems that we have now. I remember we had gotten rid of those box drills, and we went to, I cannot remember the number of the FlexiCoil drill, but it had the auger and the central loading. We thought that we had absolutely, like, this is amazing. Life can't get better than this. And boy, it obviously it has. But it's the downtime. That's we were just talking about calibration, but also the technology has improved so much to help you, so those fills, fertilizer or seed, are much more efficient, less in the downtime, more acres done in the day. It's kind of like spraying. We talk about the it's almost like a pit stop mentality. Doing more acres in a day is, obviously you could drive that tractor faster, not necessarily ideal, but if you can shrink those load times, then you're driving more of the day and you're getting more acres done.
Oh yeah, like 100%. For little guys like me, my pit stops are incredibly slow, but I don't have many acres to do that. If you're farming a lot of acres, you just have to improve in that area. It makes such a massive difference. And you mentioned calibration, Shaun. I had a grower, we were chatting about his winter wheat, and I asked him what his seeding rate was, and he kind of hung his head and said, "Oh, you're going to hate me, Pete, but
oh no,
135 pounds per acre."
Whoa, what are we doing?
Exactly. What is that?
and if you're kind of like quiet about, you're gonna, if you already know to disclaim your statement with, "Pete, you're going to be mad at me," and it's not the right way to do it, why are you doing it that way?
Yeah, this is a fine question, but at least he was, I don't know, almost embarrassed. So maybe that means next year he'll be able to say it was whatever 1.5 million seeds per acre, whatever it should be.
Yeah. Hey, you and I were throwing text back over the weekend, and saw that Green Eye company. I think they're based in Israel, aren't they?
Yep.
They just a new round of funding, $20 million. I read the press release. Very interesting technology, and this again is a step in the direction of trying to remove weeds without having to spray products as we have trouble with weed resistance. What is this green eye tech? 'Cause I think a lot of people haven't necessarily heard of it.
Yeah, so green eye is lots of different manufacturers out there getting into this, some of the mainstream companies as well. And it's essentially the green on brown technology where you sense a green weed and you can spray it. And of course, we're getting into green on green where the technology can see, well, that's a weed versus a wheat plant or a soybean plant and only spray the weed. And Shaun, two things about this technology. Number one, it is improving at an incredible pace. So where it used to be that it was tough enough just to say, oh, that's green, not brown. Now that technology with the algorithms that they're developing, it can say that's a dandelion and therefore, I can spray this product on that dandelion versus that's a kochia plant or a fleabane plant and use different technologies depending on how advanced the sprayer is. But the other real key, and we have to get better at this, because with all the resistance that we are getting into, and one of the reasons that resistance develops often is that we're always kind of at the lowest end of the label rate. Some people will shave the label rate, but because it costs money, you really don't want to go out there and spray every acre at a high rate of herbicide. Well, man, if you're only spraying that little square foot where that weed is, you can increase the rate, which really helps give you a better chance at getting control. It doesn't stop resistance, but it may well slow it down. And so, yeah, this technology is awesome. It can't come fast enough. Pete's never going to own a sprayer that's capable of doing that because he just doesn't have enough acres. But my spray guy, hey, Bernie, if you're listening, get with the program. Get one of those units, will you?
Yeah, and I've told the story before, but I remember talking to, I was over in Germany, in Frankfurt. Bayer has at least at the time, they had a herbicide research facility there. And I remember there was a weed scientist from Bayer talking to us about how with this kind of technology coming to fruition and being real, it's going to allow them to also look at maybe some chemistries that couldn't be broadacre sprayed, but they could be sprayed in a spot situation, right? Because they're very damaging to those weeds that we're trying to control, but they're also damaging to the crop. So, if we have a spot spray situation, it allows us to maybe open up to some products that we had previously, put on a shelf and they're collecting dust. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but that's another angle on this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the other part of this, Shaun, is there's lots of hype in terms of, well, we can use the weed stomper or the like other technologies in
burning
order to
flames.
Exactly, sure, the fire burner, whatever.
I like that.
But the reality is that in terms of covering lots of acres, those technologies just are too slow. And so as much as we keep saying we can't rely on herbicides to overcome a problem created by herbicides and today's modern sprayer are still the vehicle that can get the job done efficiently, effectively, and in a timely fashion. And so, man, we gotta keep relying on that as much as we're going to use tillage as another tool and rotation as another tool. But yeah, this technology, it needs to come fast. And it is, and that's good.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't have to itch yourself when you say tillage. I actually thought you were allergic to it. That's weird. You must have taken some antihistamines before we did this show. For balanced nutrition with micronutrients, the best answer is Wolf Trax DDP from Koch Agronomic Services. Hey, if the host can make himself laugh, we're having a good show. To learn how Wolf Trax can ensure nutrient availability through a crop's growth cycle, visit kochag.ca. And for our American listeners, if you go to kochag.ca, and I tested it last week when I was in Kansas City, it takes you to the American site, kochagronomicservices.com. Okay, let's take a break. We've got more coming up with Peter Wheatbeat Johnson. You're listening to RealAg Radio. Of course, it's Agronomic Monday.
If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products, each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's KOCH ag.ca.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. I got a really cool concept that we're going to talk about next. Perpendicular seeding of wheat. I love how we just stretch the imagination with some of this stuff. But hey, this segment's brought to you by the new Oxbow cereal broadleaf herbicide from New Farm. Oxbow is powered by Duplasm technology that is a workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds in wheat and barley. And speaking of kochia, I've got Dr. Charles Geddes, who I did a wheat school interview with that I think it's going up this week, talking about the kochia survey that they did at AFC. And, well, here's a special hint. Here's a bit of a tip for you. It ain't getting any better. Okay, we are joined by Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. Pete, perpendicular seeding of wheat. You got a buddy that's trying this in the UK. This is essentially we're doing a crisscross.
Right.
Why? How does this help?
They call it cross seeding, and you seed it at 90-degree angles. You go over the field twice at half rate each time. And it really gets down to this concept of trying to keep the seeds as far apart from every other seed as possible. Now, one of the challenges is that when I cross seed, now I've got rows going both ways. And so in terms of air movement in the canopy to reduce disease levels, nothing. There is no air movement in that canopy. Doesn't matter which way the wind blows. It can't get down in between the rows because there's rows every which way. So disease management really becomes pretty critical. Now, David Passmore is in the UK. He's the guy that's doing this. He actually did, if you recall, Shaun, about a year ago or a while ago, we talked about equidistant seeding.
Yes.
Where they actually hand planted on hexagonal spacing so that every seed was exactly the same distance away from every other seed. And I asked him, I haven't yet seen the research results from that. I'm keen to know how much they gained. But because of that research, he is now cross-seeding, seeding twice, right angles, to get those seeds further apart so that they don't compete with each other. They maximize their sunlight interception and get a yield increase. So I think it's way cool. Of course, you do have to drive over the field twice. I don't know about you, Shaun. When I get done seeding the field the first time, I would just have trouble doing it again. Shane and I did a little bit of that, and you also got to be careful if the field is wet. You can actually reduce yields if the field is damp, and the first time through you kind of get away with. The second time through you don't get away with.
And with today's precision tools, we're able to make sure that we're starting, like we've seeded once, say vertically, let's just use just for visualization. When we do the cross, we're starting at the point where we're making sure that we're getting those seeds through the middle of how the vertical seeds were put in the ground. Correct?
I don't think we're quite that good, Shaun.
Okay, but so we're not quite that good. Okay.
No, like if we seed vertical and then we seed horizontally, once in a while the vertical is going to drop a seed right where the horizontal crosses, and we're going to have two seeds together.
Okay.
Right? we're we're getting good at technology. We're not quite that good. It's a bit like with corn seed. If you actually plant corn seed the right side up, it does emerge earlier. Like that is clear because the radical doesn't grow down first and then have to turn around and grow up. And so you can get sometimes, 12-hour difference in emergence, which way you plant the corn seed. We haven't quite got any commercial units to plant corn seed the right way up all the time.
Yeah, it was Kinsey, I think, was doing some research on that at one time. I could see the ad campaigns, U-turns not allowed, right?
You are a marketing guru, Shaun. You can come up with the slogans just like that, baby.
I was with marketers all last week at NAMA, Pete, in Kansas City, so I'm on my game. I'm on my game.
Yeah, cool.
Would it make so it would if you were doing perpendicular seeding or cross seeding, it would work better with a disc drill than a hoe drill, I would think, or as I'm visualizing this.
100%. I mean, if you're using a hoe drill, one of the big challenges with a hoe drill is that if you go too fast, the back hoes throw enough dirt that they actually bury the seed put in the ground by the front hoe drill, like the front tines, too deep. And so that's one of the reasons why you can't drive fast with a hoe drill, particularly if the soil is loose and friable and will move a lot. So I think it would work better with a disc drill. There's no question in my mind it would. David Passmore is actually using what he calls a tine drill. So that's sort of like a really fine knife, putting the seed in the ground. And of course, in the UK, every drill runs a full set of packers all the way across on the back. So it's firming that seed bed down. And then when they come the other way on, it's firming it down again. So they get away with that.
Would the field be rough?
So I highly doubt it. One of the things about a lot of European drills, and this is probably why he's using the tine drill, most European disc drills run coulters up front, like two sets of almost high-speed disc coulters up front so that they work the daylights out of that soil. Like it just powder, and it's really smooth, so they get it level. I think that's why David's using the tine drill, because it doesn't have those tillage discs up front. And I doubt it's rough. And I don't think it's rough because that roller on the back, those press wheels, rubber press wheels, all the way across on the back, really, really tend to level it out. It didn't look rough at all. And I'll tell you, his Twitter picture of that wheat field, like it was an amazing looking wheat field. I wish I could grow wheat like that. It was gorgeous.
You'd have to remember when you do that first pass that you're going to be doing a second pass. So the goal here is not to double seed.
Right.
We want to still hit your plants per square foot. So I could see that. Why does it look like grass out there? Yeah, that's why it looks like grass. That's right. And where are we at seed? Huh. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, lots of challenges, but cool thought process, right? And of course, like all the Western Canadian people listening to us on 12-inch centers that want to go to 15-inch centers because, less tines in the ground, less horsepower, pull a wider seeder, they're all shaking their head like we're off our rocker shit.
You know what would also be a little bit, you'd have to get used to it, is weed scouting. You wouldn't have the row to look down to help yourself with some of the, some of that kind of stuff, right?
No, 100%. Like it'll take a mindset shift, and it's got to have enough more yield there to justify it. And I don't know that data's totally in yet, Shaun, but a fun concept to think about. And in high yield environments, like the really high yield environments like the UK and New Zealand, it probably makes more sense than in lower yield environments, such as Western Canada or throughout the
Kansas,
Mindac, that part of the U.S. But maybe not. I don't know. The one thing it'll really do, we talked about resistant weeds, man. It will really increase crop competition.
Yeah.
Right, and so that will help with weed control. That is one upside.
That's fascinating. Let's keep in touch on that one and see how that whole idea progresses.
You got it, man. I love it.
Okay, soil microbiology. You and I were talking during the commercial break. The idea, there's a lot of focus on soil health and trying to, increase the amount of microbes that are in the soil. And, I met with a lot of different biological companies last week. There's a lot of products coming. And if you thought there was a lot now, there's more on their way, everybody. The idea of abundance of those microbes versus the diversity of those microbes versus what you termed the functionality. So let's talk about that three-legged stool.
Yeah, so what's really cool is there's just been a new study released by AGI, I think, and that study, they really looked at abundance and diversity. They didn't look at functionality. And by the way, Shaun, when it comes to functionality, like that's a whole different game, and it's a different thought process. But if you simply look at diversity and abundance, and they looked at different cropping systems, they looked at different tillage systems, different rotations using cover crops, like organic versus non-organic. And at the end of the day, the only thing that that trumped all other things, the thing that matters to the microbes in terms of abundance and diversity is tillage, full stop. You want more bugs, more diversity, more microbes, I should say, not bugs, but more microbes, more diversity, quit tilling. It's a full stop. That's the driver. Crop rotation didn't have much impact. Cover crops didn't have much impact. Like none of the other things. I mean, I can't say zero impact,
right.
But in comparison to tillage, they were minuscule. The tillage impact is the thing that matters. And that is amazing.
What does the tillage do? Why is that?
So if you can imagine, Shaun, tillage, and if you go way back, and I think it was maybe Eisenhower who said this, but the plow is to the soil what a combination of a hurricane, tornado, typhoon, and a tsunami is all at once to one of us. And so if you think about all these microbes in the soil that are used to that environment, and in our Twitter discussion, it was really cool because at the end of it, somebody tweeted that really it comes down to shelter and food. That's what every organism needs is shelter and food. Well, the soil, and he's kind of said, well, take shelter out because we have the soil. But you can't take shelter out because that soil and all the things that it's experiencing, you plow it or you disc it or you cultivate it and you change that entirely. You think about fungi, they have hyphae through that soil, and so they're expanding and growing and they're in that condition. You go through a tillage, you break it all into a million fragments, and that diversity is gone because now that fungi has to, whatever portion of it is left that can survive, has to start again. And so that's why tillage is, it just, if you think about tillage, man, versus not disturbing the soil and the impact on the microbes, like it is massive. You think about the tornadoes that went through the U.S. there last week and the destruction they caused to people's homes. Well, plow does worse than that.
You made me think of, like, with root rot, I've had different people tell me that one of the theories is that one of the things that's led to increased, say, Aphanomyces and pulses is the movement to no-till, which kind of fits into what you're saying, is that when we be tilling more to maybe break some of the, and I'm getting way ahead of myself here in terms of what I know, but I have heard that from different people as a theory, which kind of fits into this. I did hear from a company last week, on the diversity front when it comes to soil microbes. They described their package as, I remember this, multi-strain consortium of microbes. So that's speaking to the diversity. So interesting. Okay, Pete, we got to take a break. We'll be back with more. We're going to talk about grasshoppers. They are looking to be bad in Western Canada. And what's going to break this cycle? You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Dad, we missed the window for a PGR in our cereals.
Why didn't you add it to the herbicide?
What? With Manipulator PGR, we can apply as early as one tiller. Just add it to the herbicide, no separate pass.
Don't miss out. Manipulator PGR is proven in wheat, durum, barley, and oats to shorten plants and even out the main stem and tillers. This results in reduced lodging risk, improved harvest efficiency, and increased yield. Talk to your crop protection retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
Man, welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. The answer to your above-ground nitrogen loss, the answer is Anvil, nitrogen stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how Anvil's dual active ingredients deliver extended protection, visit kochag.ca. Shaun Haney, Peter Wheat, Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, before we move on to grasshoppers, there was a couple things that I said that you wanted to follow up on. We ran out of time in the last segment. One is about Aphanomyces and tillage, and so that theory I was talking about. What do you want to say?
Yeah, so I think when you look at that, because we, from a diversity standpoint, from an abundance standpoint, we want less tillage, but then we get into this Aphanomyces thing, and you kind of say, well, why is that? Well, I really think as soon as you reduce your tillage, what does tillage do? It loosens the soil up. Yeah. If the soil is loose, the roots can grow through that soil much more easily than as if you put them into this really firm environment that is no-till. So if those roots can grow fast and it's probably aired out, drier, Aphanomyces likes moist conditions. And so the moist conditions of no-till, which is good in a dry climate, you really, you don't want to burn off moisture, but it does tend to favor Aphanomyces more so than maybe some other different microbiology in the soil. Plus, now my roots are growing really slow because they got to push their way through as opposed to this loose thing that it can just fly through. And it gives the Aphanomyces way more time to infect. And if it does infect, the roots are growing slower. It's a bit, Shaun, you and I talk about canola seeding, right?
Yep.
And so why are growers not seeding canola early anymore?
Well, because they want to get that canola off to a rare and start, and that doesn't happen in the kind of chilly weather we have now. They want to grow through that flea beetle attack period.
100%. If it's growing fast, it can outgrow the flea beetle. I think the same thing happens with roots and Aphanomyces. If they're growing fast in a favorable, easy environment, they grow past the Aphanomyces and they don't have the same level of infection. You never get away from it entirely, but I really think that's one of those things where tillage matters and that whole diversity thing comes in, and what is the function of those various organisms in the soil? And that's the other thing that you and I haven't talked about very much is diversity is one thing, and number of microbes in the soil is another thing. But then we get into this functionality part, and it's like, what is the soil function? And so if we can just go down that road for a minute, Shaun, yeah. I think that's phenomenally interesting, because at the end of the day, we really struggle in our soils to say, okay, what soil function do I need to add to my soil? And if we don't know the soil function, and what was that term you used from the company?
Yeah, it was they termed it as, we have a multi-strain consortium.
Yeah, so it's a multi-strain consortium, and I'm going like, well, okay, but in that multi-strain consortium, are there bugs in my soil already that already perform those functions? And if they are, then that multi-strain consortium may bring nothing to the table at all. On the other hand, and there's a whole bunch of redundancy in soil organisms that, again, we don't understand. Meanwhile, if in my soil I don't have one component or several components of that multi-strain consortium, they could bring some soil functionality that could really help.
How do I know what I have?
That's the problem.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. I was like, please tell me there's a test or there's something, or some dude with a PhD shows up and looks at it and says, you got this.
Man, if that science exists, Shaun, I have yet to read it or to find it or to figure it out. And so it was kind of interesting in our Twitter discussion, and Woody Van Arkel, such a great thinker, who started it, because I talked on the Word about this diversity versus abundance, and Woody said, but isn't it functionality that we should be caring about? And it's like, the answer is yes. But dang, I look at this soil, and if I'm growing corn, I know that one of the soil functions I'd like to have there is nitrogen fixing bacteria, but I have no clue how to make those things work in the soil. And someday we'll figure it out, but we're not there yet. Whereas if I have soybeans, I'm not nearly so worried about soil fixing, nitrogen fixing bacteria, because the rhizobium and the soybean plant will do that itself. But I'd really like something that might, I don't know, bring potash to the plant, or that would reduce compaction because the soybean root system is so stinking weak, or maybe it's reduce the Aphanomyces. So this whole functionality thing is really incredibly important, but my gosh, it is something that I don't think we have very well figured out, and
because we haven't, that's where the opportunity lies.
100% huge opportunity, but I don't know the test yet to tell me that this multi-strain consortium A is what I need versus multi-strain consortium B versus just simple single organism C. I have no clue, man.
Yeah. Okay, so to that point, then, that's why if I'm the farmer, just like I'm playing a little bit of, you've opened my thought process up here a little bit. What I would do is, I wouldn't just try a product of biologicals that are in this space and say, well, it didn't work. You based on this premise that you're talking about, you really should be with check strips. You should be trialing multiple products, because if you just choose one, you may not need that, but you may need product D. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I'm learning here. This is cool.
Yeah, well, then the other problem becomes, how many products can you trial? And then is next year going to be the same as this year?
Fair.
Right? So it's so complex, man. Soil is fun, and it's also incredibly hard to figure out. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about what we're going to learn in the future, because the amount we have learned, just in terms of even how organic matter is made in the soil and how much we've advanced that science since about 2015, is incredible. So this stuff will come, but today, trial. I like it. Every field should be a research trial, Shaun, and multiple different products, but there's also the time factor involved and how much you can actually get to, right?
Yeah, quite true. Hey, to wrap up here, let's talk about grasshoppers. Scott Mears was, who's from Alberta. He was sending out some messages regarding, he's finding grasshopper eggs. Not a good indication of what the season looks like in front of us here in parts of Western Canada.
Yeah, alert, Shaun, right? Even alert. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the grasshopper risk is incredibly high. And Scott, he's a bug guy, right? Like he's a super sharp guy. And he says, mostly I cannot find grasshopper eggs. And he took a picture of this massive grasshopper eggs. He says he's finding them everywhere. And that doesn't bode well for growers in Western Canada. So, be alert, spray early. They're easier to control when they're at the right stage, at that early stage, and don't let them get away on you, because if they do, they can, as you know, Shaun, they can really be devastating.
Yeah, no kidding. Also, don't let the cattle markets get away on you either. Cattle markets are destined to rise and fall. Make sure you're protected from unexpected price drops with livestock price insurance. Price protection for calves is available now through to June 13th. For more information, visit lpi.ca. Pete, have yourself a great week. Stay out of trouble. And if weather cooperates, get that seeding underway, man. Come on. Get the planter fired up. Let's roll.
We are ready to roll if Mother Nature gives us a chance.
It's always like that. Hey, okay, that is Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. Make sure you check out Wheat Pete's Word. New episode drops every single Wednesday where he answers your agronomic questions. We'll be right back here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, of course, right after this.
These days, the Canadian federal government and multinational food companies are investing hundreds of millions to support BMPs on Canadian farms. But here's the thing, nobody knows your operation better than you do. These programs need your feedback on what you want and what you need. The conversation is happening on Facebook Messenger. Do you have 5 to 10 minutes to chat today? Visit getyourvoiceheard.ca. Your feedback matters.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. You want to use a PGR in your cereals, but no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as 1 tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging risk, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yield. Talk to your retailer for more information and to confirm acceptable tank mixes. Last week, I was at the Ad Farm Voice event in Kansas City and had a great time moderating a panel. And one of the people on my panel was Nutrien lead agronomist, Karl Wyant. And we talked about after we got off stage, we talked about the power of sulfur. Here's that conversation. Okay, one of the key focuses right now for Nutrien is the use of sulfur when it comes to growing our crops in North America. Now, my perception has been that sulfur has been kind of that forgotten macro. Is that the case?
Yeah, everyone focuses their attention on nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, but sulfur is that fourth major macronutrient. You know, it's a substantial demand by that crop every year, and yields keep going up. We keep demanding more sulfur every year, but then we've also cleaned up our air on both sides of the border, Canada and the United States, and so we're having less free sulfur being deposited on the crops in the soil.
Yeah, so I guess what led to this macro kind of being designated as sort of the forgotten macro? When I ask agronomists like yourself, they're like, oh yeah, sulfur, very critical. But yeah. I don't hear growers talking about it a lot.
You know, for a lot of growers, sulfur's a new thing. It's a new concept, and they're seeing deficiencies out in their field, especially in some of these more industrial areas of eastern Canada and the eastern United States, where they had lots of free sulfur, 30, 40 pounds of sulfur coming down a year every acre. So they never had to worry about the fertility. So we cleaned up our air in the 80s and in the early 90s, started removing all the sulfur in the air. And so it's just taken some time for that sort of equation to work out. And so now, here in 2024, growers are starting to see sulfur deficiencies for the first time. And so they're detecting it, seeing the yellowing in the field, treating it with some sort of sulfur product, and then seeing that yield bump. So I think it's just taken a little bit of time for folks to learn about something beyond nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium.
Yeah, like those areas in the eastern Corn Belt, southwestern Ontario, where we've got factory stacks, the steel industry is an example, that core of the economy providing that sulfur. And of course, we had the Clean Air Act in the U.S. We had Brian Mulroney in Canada really focusing on trying to deal with acid rain. Now that we know we have to focus on sulfur, what is sulfur doing to the plant? What benefit is it providing?
Sulfur does, it's one of your big four macronutrients, so we can link it to chlorophyll, which is what keeps green. So one of the symptoms of sulfur deficiency is yellowing of the new growth, so the growth on top of the plant. So the plants run out of sulfur, can't create chlorophyll, your plant goes yellow. So that's one of your classic symptoms. If you look a little deeper in the molecular level, if you're trying to grow proteins, make proteins, sulfurs are important for how we can kind of keep proteins together. They're called disulfur bonds for you chemistry nerds that are listening. So they keep proteins together. And then if you like to eat onions, garlic, sulfur is a big part of that flavor component. So that's more for me when I make pasta and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll get we can dig into some Italian here in Kansas City as well. Okay, so Can we group crops at all in terms of which ones benefit the most from sulfur? Ones that obviously benefit versus the ones where it's still a benefit, but maybe secondary so?
Yeah, probably the top contender is canola. In Canada, if you had to rank the United States and Canada in terms of their history of sulfur nutrition and sulfur use, Canada's way ahead of the curve. Just having that canola, seeing the yield bump, seeing that bump in the oil content that goes along with that crop. So you have the canola, but then you have some other crops, in parts of the United States where we don't put a whole lot of sulfur on now. It's, some of your cotton crops, and especially in some of these places where they just never really had to worry about sulfur, and they still are still a little bit off the hook. But I think canola is probably your number one, and where we're really seeing kind of independent of crop identity is the places where you just used to get so much free sulfur, the Eastern Canada, Eastern United States, the Eastern Corn Belt, where you had so much excess sulfur in the system, and now here 35 years later, it's really worked itself out. We've taken all that sulfur out, so now it hasn't been put back in. So the biggest piece is just getting growers to recognize those symptoms and say, okay, time to do something a little bit different. Let's add sulfur to your blends, whether it's a dry, whether it's a liquid, whether it's a foliar spray, and just do something a little bit different. And the extension systems are catching up to that and doing that work. I was in London, Ontario a couple months ago, and I had a grower show me where his sulfur ran out in the liquid tank, and you could see the yellowing right away. Such contrast. So it's been really interesting to just kind of see that evolve and that message spread from the canola country of Canada, where a little more advanced in the sulfur nutrition understanding, and how it's moved out.
Does that canola factor, does that carry through other brassicas, like say broccoli? Is it also a user of sulfur? Yeah,
the brassicas, they love sulfur. Okay. But I've worked in specialty crops most of my career, and I've never met a broccoli where I've had to treat it with sulfur. Okay. And one of the reasons is in irrigated ag country, there's sulfur in the irrigation water. And so that's our free source of sulfur. So it's I think it's kind of a little bit of the same sulfur budget. It's not acid rain this time, it's irrigation water.
When we look at the amount, and I know every situation's different, so this is where soil tests and knowing your soil profile is really, really critical. But in a broad sense, how much additional sulfur are we talking about?
Yeah, so when you really got to put down that seasoned sulfur, a lot of our recommendations are between 10 and 25 pounds of sulfur an acre, depending on what's in the soil, how much organic matter do you have. So it's not a huge investment, relative to nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. Yeah. But it's if you miss it, this example I used in London, Ontario, you'll see it immediately, yellow, right in June, in July, when you're obviously missing a lot of yield window there. And it's just they missed that strip, the application. So it's a small investment, but it pays off.
Hey, Karl, thanks a lot for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If you have any more thoughts, questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can call the Real Ag feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.